All right, hey everybody, welcome to Delegate Office Hours. My name is David with GovComms. I'm here to support the call as a neutral middle party. And as usual, today we have a random handful of delegates here. And so, yeah, that's we're going to treat this like a typical office hours. Feel free to raise any questions or topics, whatever you guys want to talk about. And me as the host, I'll mostly be a fly on the wall. And if I have some good questions, I'll jump in. But otherwise, yeah, let's keep it at office hours. And so there's one other thing though. I am curious to talk about the timing of the call. I know a few people have requested varying it so that other delegates can join, so that other participants can join. And so maybe we could start off the conversation there. Perhaps like I think maybe something that would be nice is every other week we could do it really early on Thursday. I know this is running at like 4 or 5 UTC if I'm not mistaken. So if we did a call basically every other week at 1 p.m. UTC, do you guys think that would be good?
Yeah, it would exclude the West Coast, but I think doable. I mean, for me, it's good. It's perfect.
What's that's what 9 a.m. East Coast.
Yeah, it's 9 a.m. East Coast.
Give it a shot. Why not?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I'll try it for next week. And then the week after, we'll do the usual 4 p.m. And then the week after, if that 9 a.m., 1 p.m. UTC time doesn't work, we'll try to do maybe like an evening one, like 7 p.m. UTC, aka 11 p.m. Eastern time, or something like that. I don't know. I want to try to vary the times and see who shows up, because I know a lot of delegates aren't able to make this time, and it's a shame. I would love to get other people on here.
I think the question was if it's better to make it bi-weekly anyway.
Oh yeah, that is a good question. I mean, I wouldn't mind. I don't mind, but really, I'm here to serve you guys. So I think it really depends on the needs of the community and the needs of the delegate. Like something that I've observed is that this call tends to have more participation than many other office hours. And there tends to be like a lot of really interesting conversation leading up to the GNR as a result of this call. So I think it's a pretty valuable call to keep every week. But to kind of ease the pain, I don't want to characterize it as pain, but to ease things, yeah, I'm open to doing things bi-weekly. Maybe I could run a poll or something.
Yeah, I mean, I think we still have pretty good participation numbers. Still a far way down from the like 40 plus people we had at the height of this in summer, but let's see how it turns out. I mean, I was just thinking we could do bi-weekly, and then if there's an urgent topic, just have this kind of slot and have it kind of ask based in a way, like somebody provides an interesting topic, then yes, it's on. And if everybody's like,
I was gonna say like the way that all the other office hours are, like it's just like a matter of being available, right? Like even if there's no topic, like we could all just hang out here in silence and like continue working, right? Until somebody's like, hey, what about this? Just being here together, I feel like is good for the organization. It's good for like, it's good, it's not a bad thing to be available.
It's true.
All right, so let's get into it. Because we were just talking about this subject, Raphael and I. It actually started yesterday with Tim Black. We did a recording, it's not a shameless plug, but we did Drinks for MakerDAO Delegate, and Tim and I stayed afterwards and we were discussing the GUSD PSM, the proposal that Gemini has put up. And we came up with an interesting idea, and it might sound crazy. I don't know if we have anybody here from Risk, or I see Sebastian. Robert is here from CES, but we came up with a crazy idea of like, what if you took the if you took the USDC, and help me out, Tim Black, if I'm wrong here, take the USDC PSM, flash loan into DAI, right, in one transaction, and then buy some GUSD, which is going to be provided by market makers like Genesis, FTX, Wintermute, what have you. Hopefully Gemini can arrange that. And then take the DAI, swap it to GUSD, and then take the GUSD and put it into the GUSD PSM to earn that reward that Gemini is proposing. I don't know anybody here is technical, but Tim Black, if I got that wrong, you can correct me. But this all has to be done in one flash loan, so in one transaction, right? So I don't know what you guys think of that, if that's even possible, or is that just wishful thinking on our end from the delegate side?
I think I was just doing the full route for how you could kickstart those incentives, I think, right? I don't think it would make sense for Maker to eat the whole pie of something, but I think that was basically the route. Yeah, no market makers in the middle though. That's the only part. All this would just be fully technically executed, as far as I understand.
Yeah, but the liquidity, right, for GUSD is non-existent. So how would you swap 50 million USDC to DAI and then DAI to GUSD? Unless somebody here knows a pool that has that liquidity.
Yeah, how deep is it right now?
No idea.
301 million is the market cap, and there's a little over 350,000 of exchange liquidity per day. So I think if Maker wants to, like, if Genesis is serious about that proposal, they have to meet a lot more GUSD, right?
Yeah, so if you think about it, if Gemini find a way to fill the PSM, they get what, 1.7% for each, well, on whatever the amount of GUSD they mint. And so they might have an incentive, or someone might have an incentive to do it. And it will be way faster than what we can do.
I'm just trying to understand what problem it is that we're trying to solve above and beyond what's been presented.
Cut out the middleman of having to do everything on chain, right? You take you relieve some of the PSM, USDC PSM. I don't know, for some reason, I'm always, every time I think of PSM, I only think of USDC, right? Unfortunately, but you relieve that by swapping some of it on chain in one flash loan from USDC to GUSD, and then deposit it into the GUSD PSM. So it's kind of moving money around, but again, in one transaction. But I don't think that's even possible, unless here somebody thinks it is.
No, but I think for a flash loan, you don't need collateral. I think so. That's the one thing. So it doesn't matter what's in the PSM or not. You could just flash loan a ton of DAI and then exchange for GUSD and put it in the PSM. But the problem is that this duration for the flash loan until you repay is kind of short. It can be longer than one block, but I think not that much longer. So like at 1.2% per year, the amount of yield you get it's really small.
But I'm still trying to, like, my understanding is that Gemini is going to do whatever they need to do, mint whatever, GUSD, deposit it in the PSM. We're going to generate DAI and put it in the stability buffer, and they're going to pay us. They're trying to pay us directly to an ETH address, so we try to not have an entity. So if that's the way that this deal is being presented, but we're trying to do a different deal, that's okay. I just don't know what the new deal is, other than like, hey, now we're dragging USDC in there, which is fine, but that's not, I think, the way that this particular deal is being set up.
I think, Robert, what the delegates here are trying to do is figure out a way to get more GUSD into our PSM by an action of Maker governance. And so, yeah, the question is whether we should or not, and then whether it's their problem or not. Like from, I guess, Gemini's perspective, just having the deal and then barely, like, just having the option for the PSM might be really good. But like, yeah, I guess, like, what can Maker do to maximize its yield? What can Maker do to maximize its revenues?
Yeah, I mean, we could ask Gemini to deposit a whole lot more than what they're planning to.
Right. Right.
So I really wouldn't worry about this problem for the next weeks. But what I get from delegates that are present is that you have no issue with raising the GUSD PSM. And then my question to you would be, how far would you want to go? What is your limit? Because I made a senior request for 500 million.
Sebastian, can I ask you a question? Because like I just haven't come to a conclusion here. My question is this: let's say we expand the GUSD PSM to 500M. Gemini positions the 500M. Somebody comes along and swaps 200M into, or like, let's say the full 500M into GUSD into DAI, right? And then basically, if the guy wants to redeem all of that position, what does it mean? How does it work? Liquidity wise. Oh, sorry, you're mute.
Yeah, sorry. So you are saying if someone deposits 500 million and GUSD and get 500 million DAI?
Yeah, I think that's the point, right? Like people switch, deposit GUSD and swap it to DAI, and then the GUSD is in the PSM, right? That's how it works.
Yes,
that's how the GUSD comes in. So okay, somebody like Big Whale says, oh, I have 500 GUSD, wherever he has that from, deposits it in the PSM, swaps it to DAI, and now has the DAI. Does whatever with the DAI, we have the 500 GUSD, but then we have to keep that, right? Because if the guy comes back to swap it back, we need to have that, right?
No, we don't have to keep it because in the PSM, everything that is deposited in the PSM is a property of MakerDAO. Mm-hmm. If you want, and we let anyone take it for whatever the tout is, which is usually 0%. So if you deposit GUSD and you come back, right? Sorry,
we have no obligation to have that available in a sense.
No, yeah, you can. If you deposit 1 million GUSD and I steal all the GUSD from the PSM, well, you will not be able to redeem, and that's not my problem or MakerDAO problem. It's only your problem. It's really just a marketplace, and there might be GUSD on the shelf or not.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
So the problem that you need to consider is more that the fact that I've discussed with risk a little bit, and the tail risk are, well, Gemini, there is 500 million or whatever the amount in the PSM. And then Gemini says, well, thank you very much. I have 500 million out. Now I will forbid convertibility to US dollar. Because now I have 500 million that you cannot redeem, and I will touch the treasury bills rate on that, something like that, or make a fee to conversion to US dollar. So we might end up with a sticky position, which might be an issue. And let's say they will not pay us anymore. They might rug us, but my view is that's unlikely because still a big company with a public presence. But that's the kind of risk you need to be aware, which can be the same actually for USDC. So yeah, there are pros and cons, and that's why my question to you is more about what is the size of the exposure you want and the risk you want to take and so on. So in the senior request, I'll put 500 million just because I always use 500 million those last few months for everything.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like I'd love to have somebody who thinks about this stuff on a daily basis, like Risk or you guys, to come up with a number, because you're obviously more qualified than me. You know, like I can say 500M, but it's a number, right? And so, like, what does it mean in terms of risk exposure? That's kind of the question. Like, which number would Risk or would you guys feel comfortable with?
It's not so much, you cannot quantify it. I mean, what is the probability that Gemini will default or rug us? I mean, I have no idea. And you don't neither, but you have to decide. I don't. So that's the point. I mean, there is no bad or wrong decisions. Just someone need to make the call.
Yes, but I think so. Okay, then if we say like if we are from that point, but I mean maybe that's something you could do. Like you could dig up Gemini statements and Circle statements and kind of compare these two, like on a compare these kind of enterprises with each other from the perspective of classical analysis in a way. Otherwise, if they are both the same, then I'd say 50-50, right? Like.
Yeah, and so currently, if you look on all the stablecoin, so Circle and Paxos are giving monthly statements that are quite detailed with all the assets. The one that is the safest is Paxos, so USDP and BUSD, because they do a lot of repo transactions, which give them a lot of liquidity, which is better than Circle, which is longer duration. So they take a bit more risk, but it's not a big difference. And Gemini currently doesn't provide a monthly statement of all the instruments they have. But again, Circle just started 3 months ago, so it's quite recent. And 500 million is also the exposure of USDP. So that might be an ongoing point. So you have the risk of holding GUSD and not being able to convert it later on, which is the same for USDC and USDP. We might consider that it's less risky for USDP and USDC because those are more liquid. But is that a fair statement or not? I don't know. And there is no clear way to know exactly. And the other point is a tout on the PSM that I proposed at 20 basis points to be sure that we can keep the GUSD in the PSM. But after thinking about it, maybe that's not the best option because that will decrease a bit the liquidity of the PSM. And so I might revisit that later after a few months when we get some result from this deal. I'll leave it the floor for Nadia.
Yeah, Nadia, go for it.
Yeah, I just want to like give you a little bit of context. When we first onboarded GUSD, like the idea, same as with USDP, was that the Gemini team was going to use the holded ceiling, and once they had used it, we were supposed to increase it, same as USDP and all other collaterals that we have. But because it wasn't a priority for them, like they just were interested at that time on having USD in Maker to show another like DeFi integration, they didn't pay attention to this. Like this wasn't a priority. But what I want to like point it out is that if they would like feel the holded ceiling, probably they will have right now 500 million and without paying us anything, just like by following the standard process that we have with these type of collaterals. So I find it quite interesting that now that like these stable coins are interested in using Maker capabilities of liquidity, they are offering something in return. And actually, I know they are like trying to think in a way to do it more permissionless without the need of an entity. So I think it's like a great opportunity. I think we are like overthinking it because it is just for 3 months. Yes, of course, there's always a risk, but what I try to explain is that that risk was always present. And if they were just like, they didn't follow the standard procedure, and thanks to that, right now we are in this very amazing position, and they want to give us money to increase the debt ceiling, which I think it's interesting. So yeah, just like a little bit of context of the story of this collateral.
Hey, raised my hand, so real quick, I'll jump in. Nadia, just to follow up, is there any market maker? So are they going to be involved too in all this, or do you think there's no need for market makers here? And what role do you think they can play in filling up this PSM, the GUSD?
Yes, of course. Like same as Paxos. Paxos is using a market maker, and the reason why the GUSD PSM is not completely taken is because they didn't pay attention. They didn't hire a market maker, and you can see it. But I mean, if they are offering that, I mean, I don't know. I can't confirm, but the logic says that they will hire a market maker. They are offering something because they want to increase the debt ceiling. And yeah, if they don't do it, well, it's okay because we won't have that amount of USD inside makers. So yes, I suppose that they will hire a market maker for this.
Yeah, I think the mechanics of the proposal are exceptional. Like it really doesn't get any better than that, right? We just get yield for basically doing nothing. So I love it. My question is rather, how can we get Coinbase to do the same, right?
I think Coinbase is different because Coinbase is not Circle, and Circle is not interested in doing this because we gave it for free. Like we raised the debt ceiling just because we needed, and that didn't happen with Gemini. So it's just like they're competing and are using Maker as a medium, is the way how I see it. And that is like the same reason why we are receiving other proposals that want that USDC or stable coins in the PSM, because right now it's very valuable for all these stable coin companies.
And let me just add to this that if we think about the true utility from our side or what the PSM should be doing, we want USDC in this. Like we want a higher liquidity stable coins that we can that arbitrageurs indirectly us essentially can arbitrage our peg to. I think legally GUSD wouldn't function as this because they're like our market cap is so much bigger than theirs. So if we need to, I know, arbitrage away X% of a DPEG that for GUSD represents, let's say, 40% of their market cap, it wouldn't work because we'll have slippage. So I think we're in a unique position that now we have this people fighting over, but I think we should I would go for both offers. I think it makes sense to start getting a return for both sides. Yeah, the custody thing, it obviously doesn't rub us the right way. But again, that would still really think about what is the true purpose of the PSM, and that we still have enough liquidity in the PSM, and particularly nowadays USDC, to be able to arbitrage any deviations that might happen due to market movements.
Yeah, yeah, I think I agree. Like the custody thing is a nuisance, but it's not really a deal breaker for me, at least. And I think maybe we can get better conditions further down the road, or have a smart contract implementation, or just another stablecoin. Yep, thanks.
No, and it's interesting to see when you navigate DeFi, right? Like the platforms. I was looking at one this morning, which is it's a very popular degen platform. Gee, I can't remember now. but they have a dashboard where it shows like the breakdowns of what collateral is. It's a margin protocol, right? So sorry, a margin platform that allows you to deposit ETH or USDC or DAI. And the most popular one is USDC. And I was really surprised because these dudes are like from the guys that built it, the anons that built it, and the folks that are participating in it. You know, I would have thought that they would be using something like Frax or even DAI, but USDC just seems to just, you know, be the most trusted stable coin for whatever reason that is, whether you're a hardcore, you know, degen or just the retail individual who's looking to play around with these applications. So I just don't know how a decentralized stablecoin is going to make any traction on USDC. They just completely built the game plan and they're taking over. I mean, if not, they've taken over. I think their only barrier is Tether USDT, right? Which is really popular supposedly in Asia. I don't know because I'm not out there, but it's just amazing the work they've done. And the clock is ticking and it seems that USDC just keeps on just firing and firing. And like, it doesn't matter to most people from what I see, whether it's USDC centralized or it's, you know, something that's super decentralized like UXD stablecoin or something.
I mean, that's kind of a good question, right? How do you increase demand?
I think it's about liquidity. Like the DAI supply is not enough to compete with USDC and USDT. Like I think there's demand, but when you have to decide based on the slippage on using USDC or DAI, you go for USDC because you have a better quote. So that's the main thing. If like stable coins, it's all about liquidity. If you want to pay with stable coins, it's all about liquidity, because like why would you will pay a premium just because you want to use DAI? And I'm telling you, like I manage a core unit or budgets are in DAI. I try to use DAI as much as I can, but sometimes I have to convert it to other stable coin because if not, I will pay a premium. It's just because of liquidity. So we need more real world assets.
Yeah, so I guess we can say that the battle has been lost to decentralized applications or decentralized finance applications.
We're still in the running, right? Number
Yeah,
4. Not doing too
hope-
bad.
I hope so, yeah.
And again, like the benefits of DAI are only felt when things are the worst, when there's censorship and when things happen, when real users start seeing the problems with centralized stablecoins. Whether that's gonna make it, like we got popular just when USDC started banning random wallets, right? So it's also, I think, as Stu says, like it's playing the long game.
Yeah, also I would say in terms of like the greater context of crypto and where we are in the history of the growth of crypto, like we still suffer with like limited network throughput, the lack of like a killer app. Like there's a lot of unbanked people in the world. I think that was one of the big things that that made me believe in crypto early on. And so although we might be losing the battle, whatever that means, I don't think the war is anywhere near over. I think we have a long way to go with layer 2s. We have a long way to go as a protocol. And I think, like, you know, the decisions we make today, one thing I want to caution delegates is it's really easy to make a decision, but it's really hard to walk it back. So yeah, like exercise wisdom.
And I mean, some of the farms that are being proposed in the end game, right? Hopefully that'll get some traction for DAI, right? For minting DAI. So you can deposit it into that DAI vault that's proposed to get some MetaDAO tokens. So hopefully that'll pick up some momentum, and then Ether DAI and the rest of the stuff. But yeah, we'll see. You're right. It's a long game, and it's this ecosystem. It changes so fast, right? Just don't know what's going to happen in the next 10 days. That's what's exciting about it.
Yes, Patrick, not directly as growth oriented, but through, like, we are planning to do that with Gnosis, for example. Part of the proposal that we
Nadia,
are
really
yeah.
quickly, can you actually restate what Patrick is saying in chat just for like the video recording, just so we know like what you're answering?
Yeah, Patrick is asking me if we as growth are thinking about bribing to incentivize the liquidity. So yes, the answer is yes. Like, we have been thinking about rewards for a long time. And we are talking now with Gnosis because one of the parts of the deal to onboard Gnosis token that we want to propose is that they help us with DAI liquidity on different, like, of course, mainly on Gnosis chain, but also in different bridges and dexes. And the way to do it is through bribes. So the idea we have is to use that. I mean, if we onboard GNO, they will get a loan from Maker in DAI, and part of this DAI will be to use in bribing, in increasing liquidity, in improving, like, DAI liquidity in different bridges and all of that. That's the way how we are thinking about it. And also, we haven't published it yet, but we want to present a proposal to Optimism to do the same, but inside Optimism to increase DAI liquidity by giving Optimism rewards to any DAI user in any platform. So we want to incentivize DAI integrations and use cases all around Optimism. We will do that after after Maker Teleport is completely deployed and we announce that people can use it and we have a front end and all that. Once that's done, we will post it in the Optimism forum. We have been talking with some of their delegates about this proposal. So yeah, like, we have been working on that.
I think as a side note, there's discussion on the chat room there about switching from bribes to maybe rewards. I like that. Rewards, it sounds a lot better than bribes. So for the recording, yeah. Because I think when you hear the word bribe, yeah, I can only imagine politicians, what they would think.
Yeah, like bribe implies, like, that you're paying somebody to do something illegal, right? Like somebody in a position of power to do something that's, unethical for a payoff. Like that's the technical meaning of the word, right? Yeah, that's not what we're doing here. We're incentivizing a product, by paying users a rev share or something of that nature. So I saw you had your hand up. I don't know if you still want to bring up something or if it was answered.
I think he's getting his laptop.
I missed that. Thanks. I mean, I'm really curious about the delegates who are pro endgame, what their view is on the surplus buffer kind of being converted into like ETH, when clearly like there is a need for capital. Like if we want to further down the line incentivize these sort of like liquidity on other chains and continue paying for teams. Like I'm curious like the viability of really like dropping down our capital buffer and whether you guys agree with that particular aspect of the pre-launch MIPS.
Yes, I think what's being proposed here is we're looking to diversify away from what many throughout the ecosystem and maybe folks that peek in and out have labeled DAI as pretty much a wrapper of USDC. And I think the focus of the end game is to eventually kind of swing the pendulum to another side where decentralized collateral, and the number one decentralized collateral in our ecosystem is Ethereum, right? ETH, now stake ETH. So I totally support it because I think we have to, again, swing that pendulum to a different side where DAI is no longer labeled as a wrapper. And I know it's not a wrapper exactly, but it's a big portion, right? USDC is backing DAI. So I don't have any issues with it. I think that Maker has a lot of powerful tools available if something does go wrong, where you see something like ETH drop a tremendous amount. I don't want to say 50-60% because that's a black swan event, and those don't happen every year. I think people think they do, but they don't, because lately it's just been a lot of bad news, political news, whatever, macro news. So yeah, I'm it's definitely more comfortable to sleep at night knowing you have dollars under your pillow, or in this case, DAI under your pillow. But I personally don't see any problem with swinging that pendulum over to more decentralized collateral. Be interesting to see what other delegates think.
Yeah, I see a couple of hands popping up. Let's go do first and then Code Knight.
So yeah, you're talking about so tying into that, you're saying it's good to sleep with DAI under your pillow, but if that DAI is backed by like leveraged ETH and the price of ETH just drops overnight, then your DAI is no longer backed. It's no longer collateralized. So I guess that's my big concern. Is it seems like that's like an existential threat to the protocol. But if ETH prices just drop really quickly, then DAI is no longer an over collateralized coin.
Yeah, do you wanted to jump in?
Oh, yeah, sure. I was going to mention that something that I think some of the other participants also mentioned is the fact that right now, yes, USDC is a large portion of DAI that's backing it, but at the same time, if you think about it, that also means that DAI's demand is still there, right? Because if you have the opposite problem, like despite having, let's say, PSM, that all the USDC is drained, that probably means that the demand for DAI has dropped so much that it's probably going to break the peg downward. So in a way, Nadia also mentioned this, is like, okay, so we have this USDC in the system and then we have the enough demand. We need to basically, flush out with other, supply of it basically, right? So I think that it's not necessarily negative per se. And then also, I mean, the market is in, like it goes up and down. So we had, I mean, especially if the market comes back, it's probably going to recover somewhat. But I do think that we also need to make sure that if there's USDC in the system, we need to make use of it, right? Like there was also the issue we had during the DeFi summer was like, yeah, there was a big demand for DAI, but then it was like really hard to make use of it or even charge a fee for it because unlike the other times, like there was like, way too much demand for it. So the peg was going up.
Yeah. So I think one thing, just to go to what you were saying, Frank, that I disagree with you on, is that black swans tend to happen like once a year, or like less than once a year. But I think like the less capital we have, the definition of what a black swan is to Maker changes, right? Like right now, a black swan is like what, something $80 million loss, right? Like that's why everybody's so concerned about USDC, because it's kind of a single point of failure. And so like if you're taking, you know, our loss tolerance from 80 mil to 20 mil, and then on top of that, or 30 mil, and then on top of that, you're also including like, you know, ETH leverage and like a price risk, like, you know, it kind of, yeah, go for it, Sebastian.
Yeah, I just wanted to point that in the ALM framework that strategic finance proposed earlier this year, as the risk of ETH was pointed out to 96%, no, 86%, 96%. So that's why when we proposed to deploy some of the balance sheet into ETH, there was quite some opposition to it, but at the end it was approved by a thin margin. It was only 10 million because, well, obviously, if you can drop by 50% or 80%, you can lose quite quickly everything, and then you can be insolvent, which is something that in the ALM framework doesn't have to be a golden rule. We try to always be solvent for our customers. And we can change the parameters of the ALM framework and say that ETH can only go up, obviously.
Yeah, Code Knight, feel free to jump in.
Sure. Yeah. So on that kind of topic of ETH prices, I guess I did want to ask y'all's opinion. So in the POVE and the POVE MIP, it says that like the synthetic cap price for ETH is $1,500. Does anyone have an opinion on that number? Like, why is it that $1,500 is the right number to set instead of, I don't know, $150 or $300? Like, those are all been prices that ETH's been at in the last few years. So, like, it feels like a lot of the numbers in there are just kind of arbitrary. Like, oh, we can go down to a surplus buffer of this, and we can just set this price number and 1.8x leverage. I'm not seeing the justification for like how all these numbers are being set. And if they're set wrong, then our protocol will just die because we could go under collateralized and death spiral. So it seems like a very important thing to get right that's been run fairly arbitrarily.
Yeah, I definitely have seen that same viewpoint shared in the community, and I think I've even seen Rune acknowledge it, and that's why he explicitly sort of asks for feedback from Risk and from others to fine tune those numbers. Like the way Rune operates is he's very much like a visionary and like ignores the details and kind of lets people figure out the details, but he tries to guide the ship on like a way like higher level, and I think, yeah, a lot of people recognize that the numbers need to be fine-tuned, and so yeah.
But it's not just fine-tuned. Like they've jumped around like 50-60%. They've doubled or halved when I've been following the MIP. And if we're just putting this all on like Risk's shoulders, like that's a pretty big deal to have kind of Risk deciding these numbers that could just kill the protocol with. And that's what the MIP is. It just says Risk will figure it out, basically. It doesn't really have guidelines beyond that.
Yeah, I think one of Maker's big advantages and the reason why it's survived up until this point is the value that governance has placed on proper risk management. And so, yeah, like, thank you for sharing your view as a delegate, that you feel that the risk management here is under examined or under tuned. Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's part of their job. No, I mean, I've had MKR token owners, and I'm not going to name them, but I've had some MKR token owners specify that they're disappointed that there isn't more risk analysis, and this probably was the job of RWF on RWAs and the exposure, what type of risk the protocol is taking on onboarding RWA. So I don't know who's supposed to take that over now. But I think that, when it comes to this MIP 84, I'm personally, as a delegate, 3F delegate, we expect Risk to voice an opinion and kind of set the parameters and set the standard of how this protocol own vote emulation should work. So I don't expect, the author of a MIP to get all the numbers correct in one shot. As you said, David, this guy's a visionary. He likes to put the ideas out there and then let the community fine tune it. I also think there's too much of an emphasis right now on MIP 84 as opposed to the overall picture of what the end game plan is going to propose, and not only propose but also build hopefully in the next 24 months. We're just too focused on one thing as opposed to the whole picture, which could actually, innovate how and the way DAOs can actually work in the real world. Because as said by many people, DAOs right now aren't really working, man. All they are is a bunch of clutter of bureaucracy where everyone is just voicing their opinions. Speaking of one of these DGen apps that I visited this morning, they were already arguing about the collateral ratio, and what they were even arguing if MKR should be allowed as a margin product in the platform. So all that bureaucracy, all it does, it just doesn't go anywhere, in my opinion. I think that's why a lot of the DAOs today at this moment are stuck. They're pretty much frozen and nothing is getting built. Yeah, sorry about the rant.
No, I appreciate the rant, Frank, and I empathize with a lot of those views. And I think people are really focusing on MIP 84, and also the other like pre-MIP endgame pre-MIPs is because they're going to be up for a vote very shortly, right? Like this is something that is coming to a head very soon, and so yeah, like I guess the question is like, are delegates I don't want to say responsible, but like what are the views of the delegates? Are the views that, hey, like where are the experts here? Why are they not contributing more during this RFC phase, like et cetera, et cetera. And so yeah, yeah, that's kind of what I'm seeing. Yeah, go for it, Joshua. And also not just delegates, but should MakerDAO stakeholders generally be really pushing core units to yeah, like maybe risk to do stuff like more risk work around the parameters here. But anyway, yeah, sorry, go for it, Joshua.
Yeah, I just wanted to voice something I put in the chat a few times. I just think that the end game has a lot of interesting ideas, but to view it as like a monolith, like everything or nothing, I think is just kind of forcing. It's like a kind of a political ploy to force everything through. Like I think that's kind of doesn't let us refine the individual pieces of the end game that are good ideas, and maybe take out the pieces that seem too risky. So that's kind of my opinion.
Just a couple of comments on that. Also, there's the overall budgeting process that really hasn't, some things were proposed and that hasn't been addressed. And there's another MIP deadline by October 12th. I can't get a read yet on whether or not Rune is going to post additional MIPs that will somehow change budgets. But if that doesn't happen, then we'll be at the end of January before anything changes. So there's that activity. And then if any of you attended SCS's presentation on Friday, where Wouter had presented a little bit more about the project-based funding. And that's about the most tangible piece of information, I'll just call it, that I've seen yet, in the way of like, okay, wow, this is something that I could see us as a first step transitioning ourselves into, to be, in the concept of, hey, the services are quote unquote free today. And then we click forward and then we figure out from a project basis, which projects that we want to fund, which does align with the end game. There's scopes and councils and tribunals and all sorts of stuff, right? And then sure, over time that could be generated. But what if we just, do something a lot more simple, right? And maybe that does come out. Maybe that is what actually materializes from the end game plan. I don't know. It's just there's a lot of details that are lacking that are hard to really plan around. But I would hope we do small bite-sized pieces on the way to wherever we're going, and then evaluate to see how they're working and then modify from there. But I don't know, that's just a hope.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that view. And I want to just, as the timekeeper, we have about 6 minutes until the governance and risk call. And so I'm actually gonna stop the recording here. And for the last 5 minutes, I'm gonna leave it pretty much like off the record, but I'm gonna continue the call. So yeah, thank you all on YouTube for watching.